The phrase "fear not" appears to be the most repeated command in the Bible. According to author Bill Gaultiere, who wrote an article titled "Fear Not, 365 Days a Year," and was published on the soulshepherding.org website, and I quote, "It's been said that there are 365 fear nots in the Bible, one fear not for every day of the year," end of quote. Hello, I'm Kathy Bartow. Julie Barrier said in her article that was posted on crosswalk.com, and I quote, "My husband often preached, most of us think that we are in the land of the living en route to the land of the dying. Nothing could be further from the truth if we know Jesus Christ. We are in the land of the dying, traveling to the land of the living." Listen to what God gave to us in 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. "For God gave us a spirit, not of fear, but of power and love and self-control." And in 1 John chapter 4, verse 18, "There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. For fear has to do with punishment, and whoever fears has not been perfected in love." Now, this week's video is the first in a 4-part series on fear. This week, we're talking about Daniel and his 3 friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. All 4 of these young Jewish men experienced possible death unless they bowed down to their respective kings. In Daniel's case, he could have died by the mouths of hungry lions. And in his 3 friends' cases, they could have died at the hands of a fiery furnace. As I read these 2 passages, remember that it was their immense love and trust in God and God's demonstration of his grace that enabled these 2 miracles. Here's Daniel's story in Daniel chapter 6, verses 7 through 22. The royal administrators, prefects, satraps, advisors, and governors have all agreed that King Darius should issue an edict and enforce the decree that anyone who prays to any god or human being during the next 30 days, except to you, your majesty, shall be thrown into the lion's den. Now, your majesty, issue the decree and put it in writing so that it cannot be altered, in accordance with the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be repealed." So King Darius put the decree in writing. Now, when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows opened toward Jerusalem. 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before. Then these men went as a group and found Daniel praying and asking God for help. So they went to the king and spoke to him about his royal decree. "Did you not publish a decree that during the next 30 days, anyone who prays to any god or human being except to you, your majesty, would be thrown into the lion's den?" The king answered, "The decree stands in accordance with the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be repealed." Then they said to the king, "Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, your majesty, or to the decree you put in writing. When the king, he still prays 3 times a day." When the king heard this, he was greatly distressed. He was determined to rescue Daniel and made every effort until sundown to save him. Then the men went as a group to King Darius and said to him, "Remember, your majesty, that according to the law of the Medes and Persians, no decree or edict that the king issues can be changed." So the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel and threw him into the lion's den. The king said to Daniel, "May your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you." A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring and with the rings of his nobles, so that Daniel's situation might not be changed. Then the king returned to his palace and spent the night without eating and without any entertainment being brought to him, and he could not sleep. At the first light of dawn, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den. When he came near the den, he called to Daniel in an anguished voice, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions?" Daniel answered, "May the king live forever. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me, because I was found innocent in his sight." Here's the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These three Jewish men were thrown into a fiery furnace by Nebuchadnezzar II, king of Babylon, because they refused to bow down to a gold statue that had been made in the king's image. Listen to Daniel chapter 1, verses 1 through 30. King Nebuchadnezzar made a gold statue. It was 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide. He set it up on the plain of Dura near the city of Babylon. Then the king sent for the royal rulers, high officials, and governors. He sent for the advisors, treasurers, judges, and court officers. He sent for all the other officials of Babylon. He asked them to come to a special gathering to honor the statue he had set up. So the royal rulers, high officials, and governors came together. So did the advisors, treasurers, judges, and court officers. All the other officials joined them. They came to honor the statue that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. They stood in front of it. Then a messenger called out loudly, "Listen, you people who come from every nation. Pay attention, you who speak other languages. Here is what the king commands you to do. You will soon hear the sound of horns and flutes. You will hear zithers, lyres, harps, and pipes. In fact, you will hear all kinds of music. When you do, you must fall down and worship the gold statue. That is the statue that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. If you don't, you will be thrown into a blazing furnace right away." All the people heard the sound of the horns and flutes. They heard the zithers, lyres, harps, and other musical instruments. As soon as they did, they fell down and worshiped Nebuchadnezzar's gold statue. They were people from all nations, no matter what language they spoke. At this time, some people who studied the heavens came forward. They spoke against the Jews. They said, "King Nebuchadnezzar, may you live forever. Your Majesty has commanded everyone to fall down and worship the gold statue. You told them to do this when they heard the horns, flutes, zithers, lyres, harps, pipes, and other musical instruments. If they didn't, they would be thrown into a blazing furnace. But you have appointed some Jews to help Daniel govern Babylon and the towns around it. Their names are Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They don't pay any attention to you, King Nebuchadnezzar. They don't serve your gods, and they refuse to worship the gold statue that you have set up." Nebuchadnezzar was very angry. He sent for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So they were brought to him. The king said to them, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, is what I heard about you true? Don't you serve my gods? Don't you worship the gold statue I set up? You will hear the horns, flutes, zithers, lyres, harps, pipes, and other musical instruments. When you do, fall down and worship the statue I made. If you will, that's very good. But if you won't, you will be thrown at once into a blazing furnace. Then what God will be able to save you from my power?" Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to him. They said, "King Nebuchadnezzar, we don't need to talk about this anymore. We might be thrown into the blazing furnace, but the God we serve is able to bring us out of it alive. He will save us from your power. But we want you to know this, your majesty. Even if we knew that our God wouldn't save us, we still wouldn't serve your gods. We wouldn't worship the gold statue you set up." Then Nebuchadnezzar was very angry with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. The look on his face changed, and he ordered that the furnace be heated 7 times hotter than usual. He also gave some of the strongest soldiers in his army a command. He ordered them to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then he told his men to throw them into the blazing furnace. So they were tied up. Then they were thrown into the furnace. They were wearing their robes, pants, turbans, and other clothes. The king's command was carried out quickly. The furnace was so hot that its flames killed the soldiers who threw Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego into it. So the three men were firmly tied up, and they fell into the blazing furnace. Then King Nebuchadnezzar leaped to his feet. He was so amazed, he asked his advisors, "Didn't we tie up three men? Didn't we throw three men into the fire?" They replied, "Yes, we did, Your Majesty." The king said, "Look, I see four men walking around in the fire. They aren't tied up, and the fire hasn't even harmed them. The fourth man looks like a son of the gods." Then the king approached the opening of the blazing furnace. He shouted, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, come out. You who serve the Most High God, come here." So they came out of the fire. The royal rulers, high officials, governors, and advisors crowded around them. They saw that the fire hadn't harmed their bodies. Not one hair on their heads was burned. Their robes weren't burned either, and they didn't even smell like smoke. Then Nebuchadnezzar said, "May the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be praised. He has sent his angel and saved his servants. They trusted in him. They refused to obey my command. They were willing to give up their lives. They would rather die than serve or worship any god except their own God. No other God can save people this way. So I'm giving an order about the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. No one may say anything against him." That's true no matter what language they speak. If they say anything against him, they'll be cut to pieces and their houses will be turned to piles of trash. Then the king honored Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He gave them higher positions in the city of Babylon and the towns around it. Praise be to God. Till next time, peace be with you.